Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah. Thanks, John. Thanks for this, and it's great to be talking to this group about spot instances, and a very quick intro about me and why we want to speak about spot instances. I am a co-founder at 47 Line. As a team, we are part of Alchemist Accelerator in the city, and as a team, we've been working in AWS for the last 7 years. In fact, the simple monthly calculator that is still kind of live on the AWS site was built by us for AWS. And not just that, we built a whole lot of other POCs for the AWS evangelization teams starting in 2007, 2008. We do understand AWS really well as a team, and we've been working extensively on AWS using most of their services, all of their services over these last many years. And yeah, that's a quick intro. I'll talk about the product at the later part of the presentation. This meetup is all about spot instances. I'll get going with that. There may be some of these slide points can be very basic. I mean, this is a AWS gurus group, but just to make it easier for everybody, I'm just going to have some basic stuff also as part of the presentation. Mainly because we've seen companies that have been using AWS for 5-7 years, and they've still not ventured into Spot, surprisingly, because they think Spot is too complex. Spot is not reliable. Many reasons why they've not gone to Spot. So there are companies using AWS heavily, but not so much of Spot. That's the reason we want to have this meetup, and there may be some basic things also that I cover during this. Yeah. Anyways, moving on. So there are, as we all know, there are on-demand instances, which is the hourly rate, and there is reserved instances where you make an upfront payment, have a commitment with a lower hourly rate, and you have capacity reservation, and within that you have different tiers: 1 year, 3 year, and then there is spot instances, which is our topic for the day. So what is a spot instance? These are spare capacities at steep discounts, and sometimes as much as 90%. We've seen this. This is for real. In fact, in the previous meetup, I met Ryan, and he was asking me if these, I mean, he's seen these data on the web, on the history in spot instances. Are these real numbers, or it's just marketing blown up numbers? But we've been using spot instances heavily, and we know these are 90% kind of numbers are all for true. You do get such high discounts. And yeah, so basically it's spare capacity. It's an auction based pricing model, more like the eBay bidding. You just based on the availability, you place your price, and if it is matching, you get the instance for you to use. Completely demand supply economics in play. So yeah, it's bidding for unused EC2 capacity, and the hourly price is set by AWS, and this is for each instance type in each AZ, and of course in each region. So there is no uniform number across regions or across AZs. Each one is different, each one is dynamic, and it completely fluctuates depending on the supply and demand at that point in time. And it runs whenever you get access to your spot instance, whenever your bid exceeds or matches the current market price. The other thing to note with spot instances, these are not as instantaneous as your on-demand instances. There is a delay when with the spot instances being provisioned and being launched. And of course, broadly, the downside of spot instances, it's with that kind of a discount, it's definitely too good to be true kind of a thing. But there is definitely a downside, which is the AWS might terminate these spot instances that you are running based on any availability change. If there are more on-demand requests, obviously it would be fulfilled by taking away spot instances. And also, if your bid is exceeded by somebody else, your instance is going to be taken away from you. So that's the downside. And yeah, within that, there is a good thing as well. If you have partial hours, they are not charged. So if you have something running for 45 minutes and then the instance is terminated or taken away, you are not charged for that duration. Just about the life cycle of a spot instance. So you create a spot request. You can do this from AWS SDK, from the management console, or from the CLI. I'll also, in the following slides, I'll talk about how you can launch it from the management console. So when you create a request, you send it with certain parameters, the bit price, the instance count, how many spot instances, basically, that is the instance count. And you also give a launch specification in terms of the AMI ID, the AZ that you want this to be launched in, security group, VPC, and subnet ID. You just have to be careful here. The AZ and VPC are optional, but all the other parameters are mandatory. And you also give your type, specify your type, that is whether it is a one-time request or a persistent spot request. A one-time spot request is where you just place a request, spot instances are launched or not launched only one time. They are launched, and if they are terminated, it is gone. So it is just a single request that you place. If it is persistent, until you have a validity which is not expired, it would keep repeating or looping that process. It would keep launching instances as and when it gets terminated. So that's the persistent type. And if you have bad parameters, the instance would be, I mean, the request would be in a failed state. So these are the different request states of a spot instance. Open, this is when your request is waiting to be fulfilled. When you actually request for a spot instance, it would immediately be in the open state. It would move to an active state when the request is fulfilled, and it has an associated spot instance. As we saw earlier, so if you have a bad parameters as part of your request, it would be in failed state. It would be in a closed state when the spot instance gets interrupted or terminated, and it would be canceled if you actually go ahead and cancel your spot request, or if the request expires in the case of a persistent spot request. Again, this is a visual view of the spot request states. So when you have a create request, it would be in open, and then it would move to active, and you can cancel it from an active state or an open state, and it would move to closed if it is one time. If it is persistent, it would just loop until it expires. So I'm just going to go ahead and run a short video wherein I'm just going to launch a spot instance from the management console. So first thing, you log into your account. Under the instances tab, you can see spot instances, spot requests. You can go ahead and click on request spot instances. And in step 2, you would basically choose the instance type. What AMI you want to choose, you can actually choose that in the next step. And as you can see, the T1, the T2 family is not available in spot. So you'll have to choose the ones that are available. And in the next step, you can configure your spot request. Here, this is where you actually specify how many instances you want. What is your bid price going to be? You also see the current price in the region that you've chosen. What are the current spot price in different AZs within that region. You can also give an AZ group where you can tag the instances, and again you can also give a launch group so that all instances will be launched together or they won't be launched at all. This is the request valid from and valid to for the persistent request. So it would actually use that data, and you can launch the spot instance into either EC2 Classic, or you can launch it in a VPC. That's your based on your preference. And yeah, the other thing that I want to mention around that, usually you can, just going back a little bit here. So in the bottom, you can see monitoring, and then there is enable CloudWatch detailed monitoring. Basically, if when you don't select it, typically every 5 minutes data is uploaded to CloudWatch. But when you do select this option, CloudWatch detail monitoring is enabled, and you have data every minute, and it is in a lot more detail. And also you can see the advanced details here, uh, right below. And this is where you actually specify what we want to run during instance launch. So you can actually have a shell script for Linux, PowerShell for Windows, that would go into this advanced details area. And once you do that, adding storage is like the on-demand EC2 request, and then you can tag a spot request. This is to group, say you are launching different spot instances for a specific customer, you can actually do that. And security group is like on-demand EC2. You can just create the security group, and then finally you review and launch the spot request. So it takes a few minutes after you launch spot instance request. You can actually go back to your console, dashboard, and see for this particular request. You can see that the state is currently open and it is pending fulfillment. And once it is ready, so it is fulfilled and the state is actually active. You can also go to the instances and then see that this particular instance is available and listed there. And when you go to the descriptions, you can see that the life cycle of this is spot. So you know that this is a spot instance that is being that is running actually. So you can see that here in the description area. So this is how you can launch spot instances from the dashboard. And I'm also going to talk a little bit quickly about terminating a spot instance. So you can again go to your instance login and then go to spot requests, right click on your spot instance, and then say cancel spot instance request. So this would actually cancel your request, but this would not terminate the instance. So you would have to uh, separately terminate the instance. The instance is still running, just that the request is stopped. So you have to go back and then terminate the instance separately. So this would actually, this would terminate the instance, and you can see that status also reflecting. So you can see that the instance state is now shutting down and then it's terminated. Yeah, so we are all good. So that's from the dashboard you saw how to launch and terminate spot instances. So there is this thing with spot instances. This one's recently launched, few months back. Earlier with spot instances, if there is a, if your instance is outbid, or if your bid is outbid, or if there is instance availability is not there, your instance is just pulled out. You don't have any way to manage it. But recently AWS has launched this termination notice, which is basically a 2-minute lead time for you to make sure that you can do all the required changes, saving the state, uploading log files, all that you would want to do in the 2-minute window. So you have 2 minutes to basically, before the instance is taken away or reclaimed by AWS. And how you can actually monitor for this. So whenever the spot instance is going to be terminated, AWS would set it to marked for termination. So you would have to poll for this particular state. If it is marked for termination, then you know that your instance is going to go away, so you can plan accordingly. How you can actually find this, one of the things you can do is poll the instance metadata every 5 seconds. So you can just run a curl command with an endpoint, and just run this. You would know that the termination time item would be present. So this way, if it returns a termination time notice, if this request, then it means that it is going to be terminated. And based on this, you can actually go ahead and save the log files to S3, remove this particular instance from ELB, do all that activity that you should be doing. If it is set, if the particular parameter is present. If not, you would just see a 404 error, or if there is no value, if there is nothing, then you're good. You can continue using the spot instance. So that's primarily about spot instance and termination notice. The other thing that I'll also talk about spot instance strategies in a few slides from now. The other interesting thing that AWS has recently launched is the EC2 Spot Fleet feature. So what Spot Fleet is basically, it's a set of APIs that help in starting, stopping, and managing a fleet of Spot instances, all with a single request. So basically, you can have multiple Spot instances aggregated into a single fleet, and you can manage it with a single request. Here, user specifies the number of instances that they want as part of the fleet, and they also give a map of all the different type of instances they would need, and set a maximum bid price. So these are the things that user provides. So it includes target capacity, one or more. Here you can have multiple launch specifications. Earlier we saw that for regular spot instance requests, you can have only one launch specification. With Spot Fleet, you can have multiple launch specifications. So you can have spot instances running in different AZs, in different instance types, all that you can have, and you can aggregate all that into a single fleet. However, the maximum price per instance, however, you need to set it, and this is just one. Across your entire fleet, you just give one max bid price, and Spot Fleet request would use this as the parameter when they match the market price and determine whether your instance can be fulfilled, your request can be fulfilled. So basically, EC2 looks up the current spot price for each launch specification, and then launches the spot instances using the current lowest priced launch specification. And in a fleet, what happens is, if you have 10 instances in your fleet, and if 2 instances go down or terminated, Spot Fleet would automatically relaunch these 2 instances. This is that's the good thing or the best thing with Spot Fleet. So you don't have to manage the independent spot instances. So as long as they are part of the fleet, and if it goes down, automatically it would be relaunched. Yeah. Spot Fleet request state. So it can be in one of the following states. Submitted is when you actually place a request, more like the open thing that we saw with Spot. You just give a Spot Fleet request, and EC2 is preparing to launch the number of instances. It moves into active state when the request is fulfilled. So here, if you have 10 instances Spot requests in a single fleet, even if one instance is launched, it would move to an active state. Even if one is fulfilled, it moves to an active state. Cancelled running, this is when Spot Fleet is cancelled. It will not launch any additional Spot instances, but all the existing Spot instances will continue to run. So if you have 10 and 6 are running, 4 have been terminated, but if you cancel, the 6 would still be running. And cancel terminating, this is when the Spot Fleet is cancelled and all the Spot instances are terminating. So this is the cancel terminating, and cancelled is when all the instances are terminated. So these are the different states. And again, this is a visual representation of the states. You create a request, it moves to submitted, and then it becomes active. And it can be cancelled running, it can be cancelled terminating, and then it would be cancelled. So these are the different fleet states. Yeah. So just to know, Spot Fleet is still not integrated into the dashboard. So the only way you can do this is from the command line. So what you do is, to start a request, you would say AWS EC2 request -spot -fleet, and then you actually give the config.json as a input. And within that JSON, you can have as I told earlier, you can have multiple launch specifications. What is your spot price? What is your target capacity? Like how many spot instance you want, and all that you can actually give that. And the output of this would be your spot fleet request ID. So what you would do is you would use this particular ID, and then if you have to cancel your spot fleet request, you would just say AWS EC2 cancel hyphen spot hyphen fleet, and then give the spot fleet ID, spot fleet request ID. So that would cancel the fleet request. So yeah, so just to summarize till this point, so we saw about spot instances and how to launch them, how to terminate, and then we also saw about spot fleet. How do you launch? How do you cancel? You can't do this from the dashboard. You'll have to do this from command line. Then yeah, so what are the different use cases that are good for using spot instances? Basically, any interrupt tolerant activity is a candidate for spot instance. It could be some financial analysis, PDF reporting, load testing, crawling, media encoding, map reduce kind of jobs. You can run your EMR in spot. Any batch workloads that you would want to run. I mean, I'll talk about our product is basically around running batch workloads on AWS using Spot. I'll speak about that. But yeah, any interrupt tolerant activity is a good candidate for Spot instances. Just some examples in terms of what companies are gaining using Spot. Mozilla, these are public data. Vimeo saved over 50%. Pharma company, I think this is Novartis, that used Spot instances to run a very large workload in very quick time. These are public examples, but from our experience, we've also, I was talking to an ad technology head, ad media company's technology head, and he was saying they would not be in business but for spot instances. So the kind of infrastructure savings they are getting, it's huge. There is no way that he said he could be running his infrastructure without spot. Excuse me. Yeah, so these are some of the examples. There was this query around some of the spot strategies or what you should be thinking about when you run spot instances. So some of these things are to choose a reasonable bid price. You can't, there is a minimum bid price and a max bid price. So the max bid price typically is 3 times the instance on demand price, 3x of its price. So if you want to have a max price beyond the 3x, you would have to raise a support request. Without that, it is going to be 3x of your on-demand price. And ensure that the AMI contains all required software. This is fundamental because you don't want your spot instance to, whenever you start, you don't want to load all the software at that point in time, so you're actually wasting a lot of spot instance time there. So make sure the AMI contains everything before, so that when you launch it, you are up and running very quickly. And also, it is important to sync important data to a persistent location like an EBS or S3. We saw that earlier. You do get the 2-minute notification, but you can only save so much in the 2-minute window. So it's better that you do this every now and then consistently. That way it's much more easier when you do have a termination notice that is coming up. And also the other thing that you can consider is to divide the work into smaller chunks, basically have multiple checkpoints, so that you can always roll back to a particular area when the termination happens. So you don't have to redo the entire work. So it's better to have a stateless and also have it as multiple checkpoints, so you can always roll back. So these are some of the things that you can consider. And also in terms of, this is from our experience, spot strategies. So you can actually run your workload across zones to get a better price. So typically during the night times, the spot, one thing that we've seen is you almost always get spot instances. You always get it. 99%, 95% or more, we've seen spot requests are being fulfilled. The only thing is the price is going to be much higher during, say, US West, the daytime. The price for a spot instance is going to be much higher than what it is going to be later in the evening, or probably between midnight and early morning. So one of the things you can do is run your workloads across different AZs to get a better price. So you start and use it during weekends or during the night time in that particular region. So that way your price, you always get a much better price advantage. You can also use spot fleet, so you aggregate your requests into one. Managing it becomes a lot more easier. And the other thing that you can do is create two auto scaling groups, wherein one is on demand and one is spot. What you can do with this is you can set up a SNS notification on spot termination and send it to an endpoint, and then you launch on demand instance based on that notification. So that way you can actually run your workload without much of a trouble. Or you can also have scale the two auto scaling groups independently. Here the strategy that we see work for us is you can have a on demand scale up slowly and scale down quickly, while the spot you can scale up quickly and scale down slowly. So this is something that you can actually have as a strategy. So these are some of the things that we've seen that is working well for us. And of course, the other thing that you can use in terms of making it easier for using spot instances and getting the right strategy is to use Batchly, which is our product. And I'm just going to take the next few minutes to talk about it and what we are doing there, how we are using spot instances there. So Batchly is a service that fully automates AWS provisioning and management, primarily for running your batch workloads on AWS. So how does it work? So if you have any of these large scale processing, whether it is digitization, PDF generation, encoding, image formatting, log analysis, or any of that large data crunching, data processing jobs, with Batchly, it's a three-step process. You would upload your code. What is your processing logic? I mean, just to give an example of image processing. So you would just say, where is your, maybe you have all the million images in your S3 bucket. So you just give that as the source, and then you upload your image magic, probably is what your library is to process these images. So you just upload the code to Batchly, and then you define an SLA in terms of how much time you have to process this job and what price you are willing to pay to process this job. So you would just do this, and that is all. Behind the scenes, I mean, it runs inside your AWS account. So Batchly gets an IAM access. So it launches all the instances, which is completely transparent to you. What it does is behind the scenes, it identifies the right AWS instance type. It will also automatically bid and launch spot instances within these instance families that it has identified. And it also has a self-healing mechanism. So any termination of spot instances, or even if there is a on-demand infrastructure failure, it would automatically relaunch additional instances. And it continuously monitor these instances and keep sending you alerts. And it also provides an exhaustive dashboard, which will give you information around the kind of savings you made, and also the SLAs that have been met, and the cost that you incurred. Everything is available from the dashboard. Yeah, so basically it abstracts all the AWS Spot complexity. It uses your existing data, existing processing code, and it runs the job in AWS at a cost and time you define. Obviously, it uses spot instances automatically. That's when you see a lot of savings. And the algorithm has the intelligence to identify the right spot instances and bid at the right price. So everything is built into the algorithm. And it also provides an easy way to report the savings back to the management. The other thing that we do with Batchly is the continuous learning algorithm. So it uses different parameters, the user parameters, market parameters, system parameters, and in real time, it builds an instance rank. So what are the different instances that can actually run your particular job in the most optimal fashion? So it builds that, and it also, the more you run using Batchly, the better it gets for both cost and time. So we call it the nest for batch processing. So that's something that is built into the Batchly system. This is a view of the interface. As you can see in the bottom, you can see how much of Spot instances have been used. So typically, as I said earlier, we've seen Spot is always available. So we would use on demand for certain cases, but typically 95% or more you get Spot instances. And this is the savings that you see, 53, 54% for this particular job. And you also see all the instances that have been used, what is your processing rate, what is your cost, and you can create multiple user accounts, you can have multiple projects. All that is possible from within the dashboard. Yeah, just to drive home the point, for a financial services customer, they use Batchly to reduce their processing time from 12 hours to 15 minutes. So that is the cloud scale aspect of it. And they also saved 70% over on-demand cloud cost, and that is the Batchly real value add. And without having to understand Spot instances, having to go through all that complexity of managing it for termination and all that. Yeah, so just to summarize, with Batchly, it's completely result driven. You specify your cost or time, and you give your data. Give your data source. The data itself is not accessed by Batchly. It runs inside your AWS account. You just give your data source and your processing logic. Batchly will analyze it and execute it by launching on-demand and Spot instances based on your SLA. It could just be Spot or it could be a combination, and it keeps improving it for cost and time using the learning algorithm. And it's completely secure. It runs inside your AWS account. You can also add third-party tools like Porticore. Batchly supports Porticore and any other security solutions on AWS that you have. And yeah, today we are just 100% on AWS. So whatever you want to do on AWS, if you're using AWS, it's fully supported. You can just come and start using it. We are also in the process of adding support for other cloud platforms. Interestingly, Google's come up with its own Spot version. Maybe we can talk about that some other time. It's called preemptible VMs, which is slightly different from the way Spot is, because you don't really bid for it. If it's a preemptible VM, you directly get a 70% savings. So that's how Google has priced it, but it's very similar. It's same capacity at deeply discounted pricing. So that's something to watch out for. And yeah, so that's all I had. And please feel free to reach out to me if you'd like to run a trial of Batchly. Do post your questions, not specific to Batchly. You can always reach me, but if you have specific questions around Spot, Fleet, feel free to put your questions as part of this meetup hangout. I'll take those, or I can actually aggregate and answer those questions and put it in the meetup area, so you can always come back and refer to it. What I can also do is I'll share an infographic of Spot instances. That's something that we created. I'll just share it with the group. I'll put it in the meetup group, so anyone who likes it, you can just download and keep it as a reference. So that's an infographic that we have. So that's what I wanted to talk about Spot, Fleet, and also about Batchly, how we are using Spot. And it's great to be talking to this group. And thanks, John. Thank you very much.
Sure, no problem. Hey, thank you, Paddy, for taking the time to explain Spot instances to us. I will post the recording of this live broadcast on the meetup so that the rest of the people can watch it whenever you want. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask Paddy, and he will write the answers and also post them on the meetup group. So with that, I will stop the broadcast because we are not able to take any questions on a broadcast. Thank you. Bye.